Hello everyone, welcome to the webinar today. My name's Louis Atkinson from Impact Innovation Group. Also presenting today are Heather Smythe of Coffee and Luke Holtham, also from Impact Innovation Group. So let me quickly go through the agenda. Thank you all very much for coming on. For the next half hour or so, we're going to go and talk around the concept of the CRC, an overview of the bid. Then in the next quarter hour after that, we'll be looking for you to ask us questions about the CRC, scope, timelines, and any other things that you'd like to clarify. And certainly responding to those questions in the last 10-15 minutes is an important part of this webinar as well. So I'll just hand over first to Luke to give you an overview and introduction to the concept behind the CRC.
Thank you very much, Louis. Welcome everyone to today's webinar. So in this webinar, we're going to give you an overview of the CRC for Distinctive Australian Foods bid, and we'll cover the what, the why, the when, the how, and the who. This bid is being completely led by industry needs and is being constructed together with a range of both industry and research partners. To set the scene, if I was to sum up the mission here, I think for the CRC, it is really to provide a driving force to grow a resilient food and agribusiness sector through distinctive Australian high-value premium food products. The CRC aims to position Australian food businesses so that they can leverage the distinctive Australian elements of their food products to achieve leading market positions with premium valued food products. So today we have presenting Dr. Heather Smythe from the Centre of Nutrition and Food Sciences at the Queensland Alliance for Agriculture and Food Innovation. Heather is a flavour chemist and sensory scientist who has been working with premium food and beverage products for more than 10 years. She has a background in flavour chemistry, and her expertise is in understanding consumer enjoyment of foods and beverages in terms of both sensory properties and chemical composition. We also have myself, Dr. Luke Holtham, and Dr. Louis Atkinson from Impact Innovation Group. Impact Innovation Group is a management consulting firm specialising in innovation and technology commercialisation. Impact Innovation Group has been working with the Queensland Alliance for Ag and Food Innovation together with industry partners and other research partners to develop this industry-led CRC bid. And I thought it would be worth noting that this CRC came out of extensive primary research that we carried out late last year. And through discussion with a large number of companies, the need for this CRC was really confirmed. And there's also been a large number of publications from key opinion leaders in this area calling for something just like this to elevate the Australian food sector and prepare it for the future. We have a great video which we have played for other audiences, which we will send around a link for to make available. And it's an interview with David Foote from Australian Country Choice about their entry into China. And one quote was from David where he said, "Clean green opened the door, but it is no longer enough." And that statement really encapsulates the why really well for this CRC. This CRC is about transcending beyond clean green to be able to create sustainable brands which leverage provenance-based attributes of Australian food products, which will be valued by domestic and international consumers. We're all very excited about the potential impact that this CRC could have on food businesses of all sizes across Australia in positioning them for a prosperous future. So with that introduction, I will now hand over to Heather to dive into the vision, scope, details and timeline. Heather?
Thank you, Luke. Good morning, everyone. So the vision of this CRC is about growing premium brands. It really is about finding out what it is about Australian products that consumers love and trying to develop that to the point that it can be easily recognised by customers and markets. So this CRC is a 10-year industry-led research program to deliver evidence validating premium Australian brands for beverages as well as foods. The projects will span the value chain, linking consumer understanding with distinctive Australian attributes and realising Australia's unique opportunity to grow a resilient food and agribusiness sector based on high-value premium products. As Luke said, Clean and Green has opened the door, but really we need to think about the next generation of branding of Australian food products, and that needs to be that they are high quality, that they meet and exceed consumer expectations, and that they can be linked due to distinctive properties of those products back to the region that they were originally produced. So there are four major different, industry sectors that we are targeting for this CRC. One of those being Australian native products, and I'll talk a little bit about how that is structured a bit later. We're also targeting premium grains and legume products, so any businesses in that sector. We're also looking at premium horticultural products, different fruits and vegetables that have distinctive properties, and premium animal and seafood products, so pork, beef, as well as eggs and other animal products, and also seafood. In terms of the core delivery areas, in terms of what projects we might be conducting for each of the different sectors, we're looking at market understanding, understanding what it is that particular market are looking for from the products that we are looking to sell in that particular region, either opening new markets, understanding market access issues, but also aligning the drivers of that market with the distinctive qualities of the product that we're trying to sell. We're also looking at areas, research areas in sourcing, manufacturing and processing technology, any innovative ways of producing a particular product, of packaging a particular product, it might be distinctive genetics that are needed to grow a particular trait that can be linked to a particular Australian feature. We're also looking at distinctive composition and delivery systems, so whether there's a specific health value of a particular product or a flavour or a taste of a particular product that can be linked to a particular region or a production style or an Australian innovative way of delivering something, they can be profiled in products and understood so that they can be used in marketing of those products in target markets. And lastly, also looking at the sensory and consumer value of products, looking at provenance and terroir, seeing if there are particular flavours and tastes that are unique to Australian products that can be used in marketing, but also understanding consumer value, what it is that they value in these products, what are their needs of those consumers, and how can Australian products meet those at a high level. So this is the structure of the CRC in terms of how businesses can become a partner. So we're looking at large projects on the left-hand side there, but also small projects as well. We have this SME program is obviously for all the very many small to medium-sized enterprises which are in the food and agribusiness sector who have projects that may not be a 10-year project and they may not have more than $100,000 a year to spend. They can come in through FIAL, who we've spoken to, and who are interested in conducting an SME program within this CRC. So those companies can come in whether it's 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, however the length of the life of the project needs to be, and they can have these same project deliverables addressed for them. They'll also have the opportunity potentially to work with the other larger partners. So that's our small project SME program. We'll also have a large project program where partners of the CRC who are able to invest more than $100,000 per year across the life of the CRC, across the 10 years. We are also giving an option where if they only want to commit to the CRC for 3 or 5 or 6 or 8 years, that's also a possibility depending on their needs. Those partners will have the opportunity to work with other partners in the CRC, but if they wish, they can also only work on specific projects related to the branding and marketing and project requirements of their particular products. And each project will be delivered under an individual project agreement. And that's the way that this will form the CRC. ANFIL will also be which are now known as ANFAB. They've recently changed their name. That's the native food sector. They're coming in as a larger project partner, as they are able to, they're gathering all of the small to medium-sized enterprises within the native food sector together, and they're coming in as one major partner. And that will allow them to have greater control in the CRC and also have a greater say on their project agreements, what projects are being delivered. In the small project, obviously, program that's going to be competitive. There'll also be an opportunity, should this CRC become successful, and we certainly hope that it is, that larger partners would be able to join after the CRC has been developed. But again, that will be a competitive process. So the CRC company is limited by guarantee. The industry and research participants become members of the company via a participant agreement. Projects are managed by individual project agreements, as I said, signed by the CRC and the project partners. The SME program will be conducted in conjunction with FIAL, and participant cash commitments. The industry partners we're looking for between 100,000 and $1 million per annum. Research organisations who may wish to become a participant will be from 200,000 per annum, and SMEs would be considered companies that contribute less than $100,000 per annum. And industry participants can be aggregated, as I mentioned, for ANFIL, which is now ANFAB. In terms of the IP governance and management, the IP will be managed through individual project agreements. They'll specify IP ownership, access, licensing and use. Generally, for this CRC, we're looking that IP would be owned and commercialised by the lead industry partner, and that by default, this CRC will not own any IP. The CRC is not interested in collecting IP to form other companies or entities at the end of the CRC program. There'll be a small, independent, skills-based board of prospective members which will be identified externally, and the board will be elected by the CRC participants. The CEO will be openly recruited and will report to the board, and the intent of this CRC is to absolutely minimise overhead costs so that will give the greatest value back to individual projects and back to those industry programs. For our anticipated timeline, we're certainly marching through May at the moment. In April, May, we are going through the process of project planning with a pro forma that's been developed to be able to identify top-line target projects and understand what cash commitments could be made, both cash and in kind, to each of those projects. In June is our deadline to be able to start preparing the application for stage 1, which we're anticipating will be due in July, probably early July. The key success factors for us are that cash and in-kind contributions from particularly our industry participants can be made, and that the timescale of commitments can be developed, including stop and go milestones. Stage 2 application commences in September, and in November, stage 2 applications are due. We believe that interviews will occur around December, and that will be, the interviews will be conducted with mostly industry participants, and what will maybe have one researcher on that interview panel. And in March, the outcomes will be announced, and in July, this CRC will commence. And I'm just handing over to Louis.
That's right. Thank you very much, Heather. We thought to give people a sense of the scale and scope of projects that would be appropriate for this CRC, we'd use a case study. It obviously is one that is quite a famous piece of work out of New Zealand, which involved the creation of the golden kiwi fruit, and it was branded into the Chinese market under the brand name Zespri. And the reason why we think it's a good case study, because it's representative of what we would call a multilateral project, meaning more than just one industry partner and one research partner. So multiply that out to multiple partners, perhaps supporting one industry partner or vice versa. And also covering all aspects of the value chain, from production through to processing through to consumer. And what was created in that particular circumstance is what's now known and trademarked, I might add, as the Zespri system, which relates customer market requirements through the supply chain all the way through to providing what we believe this distinctive Australian food CRC will be focused on, which is this notion of market and customer assurance related to the distinctive features of the product itself, the supply chain that supports it, and the companies that participate within it. So we think it's quite a nice example of how a complete product system can be created on the back of an evidence base that is integrated into each step of the value chain, from production through to consumer. And just to further highlight some of the examples of the sort of things that was developed under the Zespri brand, at the consumer end of the value chain, there was a lot of work in sensory evaluation, and also that evidence base was the underpinning for a extensive marketing program into the key markets that the companies wanted to access. Obviously, post-harvest related to production of the product itself, and also the timelines around harvesting and ensuring that the product was in its premium state, ready for the consumer at the appropriate phases of the market year, and also related to trademarking the particular brands themselves. And then finally, in the production on farm, there was obviously a lot of support for growers with respect to skills and knowledge, support around the actual propagation and development of the variety itself, and of course a broader-based industry commitment to making it work across at a scale that would be appropriate for the markets they were trying to penetrate. So we just use this primarily as an illustration of the scope and scale of the multilateral types of projects that we think are appropriate and would be the basis of justifying an investment in a CRC in the context of what the assessment panels would be looking for. So I'll just hand back over now to Luke Holtham, and he's going to give us a bit more detail on some of the aspects of the CRC. We're looking out for your questions now, so start thinking about the sort of things you need to know.
Thanks, Louis. So we'll get to questions in just a moment, but to really extend upon that example, the Zespri model, and to build on what Heather said, you know, the activities of projects within this CRC will really span the product development and commercialisation cycle, from looking at, you know, target markets through to raw produce and production, looking at new product development, manufacturing and packaging, logistics and market access, through to sales and marketing. So through all of these areas, there are a range of activities and research questions that companies might look to tackle. And through these activities, the outcomes will be focused on enabling those participant companies to transcend beyond a standard kind of product feature benefit scenario and through to developing brand positions which harness and leverage the distinctive Australian elements of their products and make them truly differentiated in their target market and achieve a premium market value. One thing that I wanted to highlight is that when we say distinctive Australian element, this doesn't just mean Australian natives, which we've touched on, but I just wanted to stress that point. Certainly growing the Australian natives industry is an important piece of this bid, but the activities are much further reaching. It could be some distinctive Australian genetics. It could be an overseas product which is grown in Australia and hence develop some distinctive Australian qualities through being grown here in Australia. So it could be a range of different things. It could be even be a distinctive Australian product which is expanding to growth in overseas markets to service demand, and needs to determine how to maintain its branding in line with its distinctive Australian qualities. And as Louis touched on, the value for companies, in addition to financial leverage, which is accessible through the CRC, is that by engaging through a project in the CRC will act as a conduit and a stimulator to bring together companies across the value chain to accelerate commercialisation and leverage the distinctive Australian attributes of their food products, with the aim to move from undifferentiated commodities through to valued and sought after specialties. So with that, I think that sets the scene really nicely for questions. So Louis, I'll hand over to you to facilitate those.
Thank you very much, Luke. There's one question that I've seen asked frequently before, is how does the relationship with FIAL work with this particular CRC, and indeed how do small to medium enterprises participate in the CRC under what's been called the FIAL component of the program?
I'll jump in and answer that. So we're just in the processes of sending out a survey to SMEs. So we'll be sending that out through a list of potential SME participants that we've gathered, and also through FIAL and potentially the Australian Food and Grocery Council as well. We're in discussions with them. And what we're looking to gauge there is who is interested and at what kind of levels are they interested in, what kind of projects, where would they see value in building business-to-business connections through the CRC, and what type of research expertise would they want to access. And then that will come together to form the basis of the SME program for the bid, and FIAL would come in and help mould that and shape that into a successful program for them. It'll be led by their needs, and so we need to understand better what their needs are. So we're in the process of that at the moment, and out of that we will pick a handful of key projects which will represent the SME program and form the foundation of the bid. That's the way I see it coming together, and it's a work in progress.
And if you know of some SMEs, please let us know so that they can be captured as part of that data collection.
Definitely. Definitely.
And of course, worthwhile emphasising too that it is in the interest of these small to medium enterprises to join early rather than wait for later, because it gives them an advantage in terms of access to the pool of funds that will be available and matched through the FIAL part of this program. Is that true?
Certainly. Certainly.
I've got a question here from Kerno, and they ask, are there some particular commodities that you have in mind or have signed up already? Thank you very much for that question. I'll turn it to Heather to start with.
Yes, there certainly are some commodities that we certainly have in mind. In terms of who we've signed up, we're in the process, I guess, of getting close with certainly some grains, some beef and potentially some pork, and also, as I said, ANFAB, native foods are probably the front runner at this stage. We don't need companies to sign on the dotted line at this point, but we need to know. We've developed a project template so that we can actually get that top line project areas and understand who our project partners are going to be in terms of cash commitment also. So certainly there has been a lot of interest. We need to work a bit harder in the horticulture area. I think we have a few interested players there, but none who are sort of getting close to those final project discussions at this point.
Luke?
Yeah, I think that was encapsulated well. There are a range of companies that are now getting to the point end of discussions, and the key thing is that at this stage, we're just looking for the high-level indicative commitments of cash and in kind. It'll take time to really build out those projects together with them. We need to really carefully map out and make sure that they're aligned with key outcomes and objectives that are going to add value to their business, and that's going to take time. And we don't need to get to that level of detail. But on the flip side, there are some companies that already have a lot of that mapped out, and that can be put straight into the project template and form the basis of their founding projects in the CRC.
I might add, I think it's appropriate to let everyone know that we do have an interim chair for the bid, Jeff Starr, who is a well-known food industry identity, having been on the Food and Grocery Council of Australia, long-term CEO of George Weston Foods and other significant multinationals here in Australia. We anticipate working with Jeff to sort of certainly engage CEOs and other leaders at the consumer end of the supply chain to entice some of the larger companies to partner in the CRC. We've also made some good progress, although we haven't got commitments yet from a number of meat industry organisations, and what we're aiming for there, at least in that context, is a spread of commodities, so most likely beef, chicken and lamb, but also most importantly too, those companies having a capacity to move beyond chilled and frozen meat into ingredients and prepared food products as well. And we're making some good progress both in food service and at retail with some of those companies in our discussions. So in terms of commodities, certainly the meat industry is a very important part of it for this CRC.
Yeah, and I don't think we have any desires to close off any thoughts around what would be included or not included. If there is a potential for them to get value out of this CRC and in leveraging distinctive Australian attributes within their food products, then we would love to talk to them.
Absolutely. I'll also mention that the wine industry have also sought us out and are certainly interested in becoming part of this CRC as well. And while we don't include that in our list of main targets, it may be that wine forms another, I guess, important partner of this CRC also.
Question from Irene Kerno. Thank you very much. And Irene's question is, do you have a leverage rate in mind for the major projects? I assume that's major industry partners.
We do. What we'll be pursuing in terms of cash commitment is around $1 for dollar in matched funding. But there is the ability to leverage more within the scope and bounds of a project. So we were talking with one potential industry participant last week who has been involved in a number of CRCs, and he said his typical rates of leverage were $1 of contribution from them to $3 back in research value. So that's when you start to account in for all of the in-kinds that might come into a project on top of the cash that you would leverage through the Commonwealth match funding through the CRC. So the leverage opportunities are quite good.
They are, and much better than many research funding schemes. And it's recognised by the partners who have had experience with CRCs before. Those are the ones who are particularly interested in this because they've had good experiences and they know the value.
And Heather mentioned at the start, which is somewhat related to this question, that one of the benefits, it can be one of the fear points with the CRC is how long the CRC goes for, but, there is scope to come in for shorter terms, so around, say, a 3-year project, if that's what fits the needs of the company. But the 10-year term can be a huge positive as well because it's hard to attract long-term funding for projects, and this is a great vehicle for doing that.
Absolutely.
Any other questions coming forth from the audience? Can't see any at the moment, but I'm going to keep an eagle eye on the panel. Luke, we have the project template as a download. If some of the webinar participants were wanting to have a conversation with a potential industry partner, what part of that template would they need to focus on?
I think there's a lot of underpinning detail information there which helps to build out and structure a project, and inevitably leads into the stage 2 application and provides all of the relevant information that the team will need at stage 2. In terms of stage 1 though, it really is the high level cash and in-kind commitment levels that we need to get to. So there's a box, I think, on the first page or second page.
Oh, I think that's item 5 in the template. Yeah, so it's primarily where the money is, right? Yeah.
That's the most important part. Now, with some industry partners, they will need to get down to the detail because they will know that they have some challenges or some opportunities through this CRC, but they might not necessarily know exactly what they are, and so would need to build that out with them. And the template in its entirety can be very helpful for doing that, to then build up those high level numbers. So you'd start at the bottom, develop the detail, and build up those top level numbers. But for some industry participants, they know that there's a range of opportunities, and we've had many of these discussions recently, and they're able to look at it on more of a budget level. They're able to look at how much they're spending on R&D in these areas, and they're able to look at those high level numbers and perhaps mobilise some of that and say, well, at this stage, we can confidently say that we would be looking to invest around X number in cash and a certain amount in kind. And for the stage 1 application, that can be all that we need, and we can put that into the project template. And then over the next coming months, on the lead up to the stage 2 application, we can work through that with them and take the time to get that right.
Okay, so the reality is we've got around about 5 or 6 weeks to get to that point with a significant number of our industry partners. So there's a bit of work to do, but I just wanted to emphasise that the most important part of that project template is the money part. That's what we need for the stage 1 application. We can go to finer detail for stage 2 and subsequent, but in the next 5 or 6 weeks is that money part of that application, is project template rather, is very important. So I've got 2 more questions coming through, so thank you very much for taking the opportunity to find out more. I'll start with Gabriella. Now, Gabriella's interested in our thoughts about the science and research that you see would be behind all these projects. If you could comment, please. I'll turn to Heather.
Yeah. Look, it really will be very diverse. Obviously, the areas that I spoke about in my couple of slides were quite diverse. Whether it's consumer research or market research, whether it's research that's needed in product development, whether it's research that's needed in testing varieties in a field that have been grown in a particular region, whether it's some other type of research along the value chain, understanding how to make things more efficient, better transport, better packaging. Any of those sorts of research areas would certainly be part of this CRC.
And I've got another question coming through from Ross. Can you give some examples of distinctive, in inverted commas, that might be a good positioning statement for a commodity?
Distinctive. Something might be distinctively healthy. I think Bowen mangoes have a distinctive type of flavour that can be easily recognised. That is an Australian flavour of Australian mangoes. Shiraz that's grown in the Coonawarra has a peppery characteristic which is well known from wines that are grown in that particular region. What else could I describe? The texture of Coffin Bay oysters, which is so different to the texture of oysters growing anywhere else, the flavour and texture. It could be that a product has a particular smart delivery system that allows the customer to, have portion control and have the avocado or whatever it might be at its perfect ripeness level for whatever application is needed. There's many different examples, Ross, that I could give. Something that is recognisable by the consumer, it might be the colour of the sweet corn from Tim's project, for instance, that is recognisably more golden and is known then to have higher levels of carotenoids, which prevent macular degeneration. It could be, it could even be that it's a trusted brand, that the distinctive characteristic is that it's always known to be good quality, that you're never going to be disappointed and you're going to have the same eating experience every time. That could be a distinctive characteristic. It could be really any number of things.
So, Luke, did you have something to say?
It could even be a new technology that is going to enable something to be distinctive.
Absolutely.
And there are a range of different examples I'm thinking of in my head, and one is to do with a certain new technology which has created a new variety with certain health properties, and so if that can be branded and positioned right, that can be given that distinctive Australian element in the branding, which will then continue despite it perhaps being grown outside of Australia in the future. And that's really the opportunity within the CRC, is to work out how to create that distinctive Australian branding.
That was a good question, Ross. You stimulated a lot of response from the panel here. I know you've got another question, and I'll come back to that one in a second. I just wanted to pick up on another question from Sue. Thank you very much, Sue. She asked, winter tomatoes out of Bowen, would that qualify as a distinctive?
Absolutely. If it's available at a distinctive window, which is differentiated from the window of other tomatoes available, absolutely, definitely.
And there may be distinctive qualities to those tomatoes,
absolutely,
because they're grown under those conditions, and that's a perfect type of project to explore.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All
they
right.
might actually end up commanding a premium because of certain attributes that they have.
Absolutely.
I've got another one from Ross as well. Export versus, sorry, no, that's from Irene. Excuse me, Irene. Export versus domestic. Where would you like that ratio for the CRC?
Well, certainly we're not setting bounds on that. I think that's up to industry partners as to what their needs particularly are. Certainly the export opportunity is something that's of interest to this CRC, particularly in Asia. However, some of the biggest supporters of Australian products live in Australia, who believe that they want to buy Australian. They know that Australian products are ethically produced. They know that they're safe and clean and green, and they already know that they're high quality. So I don't think we would necessarily say we want to put a set ratio on export versus domestic markets. Some of the industry partners that we're speaking to already are exclusively domestic, and some have interest in export markets and already have access to export markets. Some don't have export markets yet and are looking to grow opportunities for themselves in export markets.
Yeah, we think that one of the major opportunities for SMEs may be through the SME program to have a way for accessing certain export markets, and that's something that we're trying to build in and explore as this kind of multilateral project opportunities.
Absolutely.
That could be a real value add to SMEs in the food sector. Certainly something that VL is quite excited about.
Absolutely.
And of course, SMEs compared to larger multinationals always struggle with exports. So if we can work with other supply chain partners to help them access markets that they may not have otherwise been able to do by themselves, then we think that's a really important, what we're calling business to business benefit of participating in the CRC in contrast to developing new products, business to consumer. We're going to do both, but we think the power of the CRC model facilitates both, and so that's going to be a really strong plank for the proposal going forward. Ross, I've got another question from you. Sorry, I didn't quite get round to it in the order that I was planning to. Ross's question was, how are the projects selected and finally decided upon?
So as I said, there's a project template, and major partners who are coming in will dictate what sorts of project areas they would like to work on, and there will be no generic pool of money in this CRC which is addressing generic problems supposedly faced by all partners. Each project will be directed by that key project partner, and they will decide what the topic is and what the research will be that is conducted as part of that particular project agreement. But overarching across the CRC, obviously we're going to talk about the major project areas that we're going to deliver as part of this CRC, and that will be something that we take from these templates that we're developing with companies to identify what those major project areas are that we'll be looking at.
Yeah, and at the moment, the opportunity is to get in before the competitive application process that would be built within the CRC. So all of the project discussions we're having now will be foundation projects that will form the base of the CRC and kick off at its inception. But for the competitive process, which will begin after the CRC is established, the board will review new project opportunities that will come through, and they'll consider that in line with the missions and vision of the CRC and where they think they can have the most impact and probably also add value through those B2B partnerships.
We're getting really good flow of questions. Thanks everyone for hanging in there. Thank you, Andrew, for commending us on the presentation. So we're very pleased with that feedback. His question relates to identifying R&D capability that may not currently exist in Australia. For example, obtaining Asian seafood consumer insights and preferences on product formats in specific Asian markets, for example, China and Hong Kong. Can you provide an example of how this capability may be identified to enable a project proposal in this area? I would imagine this is a question that could be applied to any commodity. Very good question. Thank you, Andrew. I'll start with Heather.
Yeah, definitely there could be projects involving consultants or companies that provide research from overseas, and there's no reason why a project can't be developed that incorporates paying that particular company and engaging them in that project to be able to deliver particular project outcomes that are needed to form a project.
Yeah, I think that's actually very early on in the conception of this CRC. That was one of the key areas that came up, was if we're, say, looking at a market like China, where you've got really stark regional differences in what consumers want in products, you really need at that local level, local understanding, local research that is really going to give you the right results. And we could certainly see projects building out with some of that local expertise and research capability built in. That's something that we're really interested to explore. So when those project opportunities come up, that will, I think, form the stimulus to find those partners. And then once they're engaged, they perhaps become partners for other projects as well, where we can see that those connections would add value. So it'll start somewhere, and it'll start around a company coming to us with that need. But perhaps it's a really good question. Perhaps we need to consider proactively going out and sourcing that capability as well and presenting that to companies from the other angles. So it's a great question.
Yeah, and I guess the thing that stands out for me is if you reflect on that Zespri case study that we presented as part of this presentation package, you'll note that a large component of it was, at the consumer facing side of the supply chain, and that then being used as the basis for subsequent decisions made downstream from there. So we certainly anticipate that component of the research will be integrated into multiple projects across multiple partners, hopefully leveraging the same expertise base. And we have had some limited discussions with some potential research partners with that capacity as well on the consumer research end. But again, it all comes back to what the industry partner needs and what sequence they would like to explore in terms of executing their projects. I've got one last question because we have only 2 minutes to run. And again, it's from Ross. You certainly have won the award, Ross, today for the number of questions, and we really appreciate the effort you're going to here. What kind of turnaround time do you hope to have between the R&D phase and then the E phase, which is extension, from each project selected? And he says in brackets, this is a hope question. So obviously there's a lot of stuff outside our control, but do we have an ideal in terms of that particular outcome from the CRC? And I'll go to Heather first again.
Look, for some of the companies I've been speaking to, they're wanting to do the research right now for a product they're looking to release in 18 months' time. It really will depend entirely on the need of that industry, on the project, and what their own goals are, and they can drive that from their end.
I think an ambition of the CRC would be to just enable that to happen faster by adding more resources, more expertise to accelerate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is not a new idea for most of the companies that we're talking about. No. They've already been investing in exactly this for many, many years. And really this is just a new vehicle for them, for many of the companies, to be able to drive their research in this area onwards and upwards and continue to fortify their brands with distinctive Australian qualities and get the next phase and the next phase of products out. So yeah, it really would depend on the industry as to how fast that turns into a deliverable.
And the nature of the research will be different and enable that transition in different ways. So if you're right back at the raw produce and production stage and then have to facilitate, you know, the extension component and the uptake of that research into commercialization, that can sometimes be a more difficult and lengthy process, whereas some of the market-facing research that you might do, so looking at different consumer preferences or looking at bits of consumer research that might influence the marketing campaign once the product's or maybe already in existence and you're looking to rebrand and reposition, and that transition can be very fast. So it will really vary.
Okay then, thanks everyone for attending, and remember to download the handouts before you exit. We've really enjoyed the seminar today. I thought it was really great to get your engagement with all the questions near the end. And please stay in touch. We'll be sending up a follow-up email. It'll have all the contact details of everyone on the webinar and other information that we think will be really useful for you in terms of considering your engagement in the webinar into the CRC in the future. So thanks again. Thanks for coming. Don't forget to download your handouts. Bye for now.